Okay. Okay, and so we met as a commission a number of times to consider what we should recommend. We looked at the current district boundaries, and this is the current map as it stands right now with the 6 districts. The population has changed in the city since the census 10 years ago. The current census shows some shifting, and we looked at that and found that there was a little bit of mismatch on population, but not too bad. This graph here is showing the deviation from perfection of each of the 6 districts. The line across the middle at 0 is if all the districts were exactly the same population, there would be no deviation. And so these bars would all be 0 right at the middle. What it's showing here is that District 1 is a little underpopulated by about 700 people. District 6 is a little overpopulated by almost 800 people. District 4 is underpopulated. District 5 happens to be almost dead on, perfect. And that's just natural progression of the population shift. It was not all that much more perfect than this when the districts were put together, because again, it's based on piecing together existing voting precincts. Just to give you a feel for it, each district, if it was perfect, would have 15,852 residents in that district. So being off by a few hundred out of 15, almost 16,000 is not a big deal. But our goal was to see if we could improve this. As a measure, we use standard deviation, which is basically just how big these bars are. The smaller that number, the better we're doing. So with that baseline of where we stand right now, we met monthly since November. We've considered a number of possible options on the order of about a dozen that we gave serious consideration to, including the no change option. Each of those options we evaluated by the objectives of trying to minimize that standard deviation. In other words, equalize the population. We wanted to avoid disrupting existing districts. We didn't want to change people any more than we would need to, because people have, some ownership in the districts they live in. And we wanted to maintain neighborhoods as best we could, trying to keep in mind what neighborhoods have in common. That's part of the charter, according to the administrative code, that we should consider neighborhood cohesiveness. So with that, we looked at, again, about a dozen possible options. Let me just show you what we came down to. From those, we looked at status quo, meaning no change. We looked at what I'm going to call option A, which was an option that improved the population distribution with the fewest changes, fewest people changing district that we could come up with. And we looked at what I'm going to call option B, which was the option we found that gave us the very best population distribution, the lowest of that standard deviation measure. And let me just give you what these 3 options really look like, and then I'll tell you which one we selected of these 3 as a recommendation. Here is the current state. So this would be the no change option. Again, we have these same bars that I showed a moment ago, showing that District 6 has a few too many people. District 1 has too few people. District 4 has too few. The others are pretty close. So we looked at ways of maybe making District 1 a little more populated, District 6 a little less populated. An option that came up with that, we're calling option A, shifted and let me go back and forth a little bit here. It shifted one precinct that I'm circling with. I think you should see my yellow arrow there, just pointing out which precinct that is. It's the south of Penn near the river precinct. By moving that, you see the deviation for District 1 and District 6, both are much better, much closer to 0. The standard deviation goes down. That doesn't affect District 4. let me just back up and compare. This is status quo with these big deviations, bigger deviations. And then this is option A here that reduces 2 of those. We also looked at another option where we wanted to try and get rid of this other outlier here as best we could. We found a way to make that one smaller. This is option B now, by moving some people from District 4 to the District 3 and some from District 3 to District 4. That caused in this model 12% of the city population to shift from one district to another. And you can see where that's all going on. Let me back up. This is what District 3 and 4 look like now. And this is what this option would propose. And we thought that that was moving too many people from one district to another. By the way, we didn't look at anything else like political affiliation or age or ethnicity or anything like that. All we looked at was just population and counting precincts. And we felt that this one really was a little too disruptive. So we eliminated option B relatively early in our final deliberations, which left us down to option A and status quo. And we felt that option A is what we're proposing. It's what our recommendation is. That option is, again, just changing this one precinct from District 6 to District 1 to shift a little bit of population from District 6 to District 1 to help equalize those populations. That was a pretty minimal change. This is, in fact, one of the very smallest precincts in the city. It has about a little over 1,000 people, if I remember right. Thanks, Mike. There's only, I believe, one precinct that's smaller, and every other precinct is larger. Some of them as many as 3,000 or more people in a precinct. So this one affected the smallest population that we came up with the biggest bang for the buck as far as trying to equalize population. So that is our recommendation. I think I've covered how we got to that. And I'd like to just say thank you and entertain any questions that you have. The number of the members of the commission are here, as well as our staff. Mr. Mike has been very helpful. So any questions you have, just let us know.
All right, Brian, thank you for the report. We'll open it up to council members for any questions or comments or any additional comments from anybody from your board. So the floor is open. If you just want to raise your hand, I'll try to see you, or just speak up if necessary. Oh, there we go. All right, Brianna.
I have a question for you. Brian, thank you so much for the presentation.
Sure.
My district is District 1, so that would directly impact the district that I'm in charge of. My question, there's not really a question because I think you made some excellent points. But I personally just have some interest in City Council opening this up to you folks. We had spoken a couple of weeks ago about the blighted home situation, and I wonder, will we have to redistrict? Will we have to do this again in a couple years if you say the living situation in District 1 were to change and improve? Did you guys include that in your review?
Go ahead, Mike, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Golembeski. I'm on the staff of the Berks County Planning Commission. I provided staff support to the commission. Directly go to Ms. Tyson's question. This process is delegated by the city charter. It is done every 10 years after we receive decennial census data. It is not done any time in between. So we will finish now and we will not do this again until 2032.
Which doesn't say, Brianna, you know, probably 6 weeks after the census, everything's changed a little bit. The city's so ever moving, you know, so that we just cut it off at the 10 years when we get the census. But a lot of movement in the city, probably a little less than, well, I guess not from what I'm hearing, but other than the growth. I mean, we've had a lot of growth throughout the city, but that's been correlated pretty much in every district. It's maybe a little more in District 6 and a little less in District 1 and District 4, from what I can tell.
Okay,
Anything else, Bree?
thank
Go
you
ahead.
for answering that.
Okay. All right. Yep, thanks, Mike. Any additional comments from the board members or questions? Go ahead, Donna, then Marcia.
And this is probably directed to Michael and to the commission. First of all, thank you, Michael. I know you're, if anyone knows census data in this county or city, it's Michael, and I've worked with him many years. So thank you, Michael. I totally trust your point of reference, even though
Thank you, Donna.
joke with you a lot. My question would be, when you look at this round of redistricting versus 10 years ago, do you find that this year you saw more changes than you saw from 2000 to 2010? Were there more changes from 2010 to 2020 in terms of population shifts?
When we undertook this process 10 years ago, we actually made, similar to this round, the changes we made were very few. There was some subtle shifting in the districts, but honestly, not that much 10 years ago. From 10 years to present, I mean, the city grew from 87,000 to up over 95,000, but where that growth happened did shift fairly substantially. One of the issues that we dealt with, though, is the fact that we can only change district boundaries based on voting precincts. If we could split it block by block, this would be a piece of cake. By doing it at the precinct level, it does make that math a little more difficult. The option that the commission came up with here, this option A, moving exactly one precinct, was probably the best. Well, I won't even say probably. This was the best of the evils. It allowed us to shift the fewest number of people, while at the same time bringing in that mathematical parity, which is the whole point of the redistricting process, and also looking at keeping neighborhoods intact, looking at natural boundaries. One of our goals was to get that south of Penn area a little more cohesive. I think the commission did a great job. We were able to handle all three of those issues with this proposed option A.
I think it's interesting for us as a city, after this is all done, for us to look at the shifting populations and see where things have changed as we look at some of the concerns brought up before via housing and density and, you know, maybe conversions, things like that, why there has been that kind of a shift in those particular areas. So I think it gives us a lot to look at from a housing and a internal planning perception. So
well, and
thank
10 years,
thank you to everyone.
10 years from now, it will be interesting again. Now that we have things like the Buttonwood Gateway happening, we're going to be adding some housing units, as there are different processes going through right now to try and get some more housing downtown. 10 years from now will be interesting.
Absolutely. And I want to briefly thank Brian for saying District 5 was almost perfect. Thank you very much. I've always felt that way. So I appreciate it.
All right, Marcia?
Okay, and keeping that in mind, I'd also like to thank the commission for all the work they did and the fact that they chose my street as the picture on the first slide. So really familiar to me as I looked at it. I know this is challenging work. And the one thing that we sometimes get asked about is, are all the districts represented equally as far as ethnicity? So I don't know whether there's any way to look at that. If we get asked that question as we vote on it, whether the percentage of breakdown in each district is fairly equal, so that we don't see any one district being disproportionately represented or misrepresented, I should say.
All right.
With the With
ahead, Mike.
permission, I'll take that one. Every single district is majority Latino.
Okay.
So that, and it was that way 10 years ago.
Okay.
So that is not a problem at all. This change obviously will not have any effect on that. If you want to look at any of the racial characterizations, what I could tell you is there is relatively fair representation throughout the city. I don't have the numbers in front of me since I'm at home, obviously. However, federal voting law does prevent us from taking that into consideration. So this process is based more, for the most part, on looking at total people without
Thank you. I
characteristic.
think that's a very important point to make so that when we go to vote on this is the information we received and we understand where everything's represented. So I believe you folks did a very good job of looking at how you did the options. I like the metrics with the standard deviation. That makes perfect sense. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, additional comments or questions, anyone?
I do have one comment, and my comment is more of I worry that with all these projects that are coming, what that would look like. And I know we that what my worry, it's just maybe a worry or observation is if we're doing maybe too much with all these projects happening, the population.
Well, Bree, go ahead.
And I don't know if anybody shares this concern, is that when we do when we do this district move, what that will mean with, you know, a lot of these projects are happening around my area, around Johanni's district, and I just am curious as to how this will look how this would look in the next couple of years.
Yeah, Bree, just to give you,
Jeff,
just to,
if I could take that, this is Wayne Beeler
go
from,
ahead, Wayne. Yes, Wayne, go ahead.
thank you. The first consideration that we did, why I agreed to this plan was that besides the fact that it did equalize the population, RAC is no longer split among two districts. I don't know if that's going to be a positive thing or not. We might have to find that in the future. The other thing about this specific precinct, my mother-in-law lives in this precinct. The residential sectors of this precinct are built out already. So there's going to be very little development. The only thing I think in this precinct is the Turner Textiles building, which is being redeveloped now. We are in the final process of getting those apartments done. But those apartments are not nearly as critical on the infrastructure like the bakery apartments were at 3rd and Grape Street. So the development possible in this area is actually very minor. We're talking about an area half of it is RAC and Penske, and but half of it's RAC basically, and the rest of it is built out row homes and apartments. The other comment I wanted to make is that if you are concerned about blighted properties, I would recommend that I am the Planning Commission representative to the Blighted Property Review Commission, and I invite you to join us in Linda will have to tell me. I think it's April. is our next meeting
Our next meeting is in March.
is in March. Okay. And this is my second time on the Blighted Property Review Commission. I was one of the founding members in 2007. So if Brianna, you ever want to contact me and talk to me about this, just ask Linda for my information. I've been on the Planning Commission for 17 years, so I'm sure Linda's tired of me by this point. So
right.
that's all my comments.
All right, wait, Bree, was that it for you? I just wanted to add that this is a requirement by our charter, so we have to do it every 10 years. And they've done most of the heavy lifting. By what I mean, they've done most of the analysis. What'll happen in a couple of weeks, we'll have a public hearing for any public input, and then we will vote on the plan after that. So the public has a chance to offer input as well, just so everyone knows. If not, I'm going to go to Johanny and then Mike and then whoever else. Johanny, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to congratulate the commission and thank them for the work that they put in. I mean, it seems like it was a fair process, and it seems like there's also a balance per district in terms of population, right? Because when we think of ratios, so you know, on my end, I know it appeared that I had the largest district in terms of population. So I think now there'll be a balance, right? Council person per number of folks that reside in their district. So just thank you. And again, the metrics are in place. It sounds like it was a very cohesive process. So just thank you.
All right, thank you, Johanny. And Mike, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Waltman. And I would just finish out by saying that as council people, you folks have a very difficult job trying to look toward the future. This particular process does not really do that. This takes into account what we have right now. That is what we have to work with, and that is how we set the district boundaries. So it may be unfortunate for us, but we really can't look toward the future. You now need to take these boundaries, and now you get to look toward the future.
Yep. All right, thank you, Mike. Additional comments or questions, anyone? Please just raise your hand so I can call you out. All right. If there are no other comments, we want to thank the commission. Obviously, it's a well-informed group, well-balanced group. They know the city and they know how to attack this specific issue. It is a very important issue because some people sometimes feel that, you know, things are slighted if they're not calibrated appropriately, and hopefully we'll have some public input at our hearing. Linda, that's scheduled for March
21st, I believe.
March 21st. Okay, so please look for that and we'll try to announce
Yeah,
it.
Lee Olson has his hand up.
Lee, go ahead, Lee. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Jeff. I just wanted to add one thing. As a member sitting on the sidelines and watching the district representatives really dive into it, I was very encouraged by the enthusiasm. And it seemed as though they weren't so interested in sliding the balancing scale so that it was perfectly at Brian's line 0. I heard a lot of discussion about the character of the neighborhood and how people were associating with the assets of a neighborhood, whether it be an athletic field or some other, center park or something like that. And what I really found interesting was that there seemed to be a defense of, we have these districts, they are dynamic in themselves, that they are political in nature, but they sort of define the city into neighborhoods. And I found it very interesting. And as you were saying, Jeff, as you go into the next phase, maybe that now that the districts have been fairly well identified from a political standpoint, to sort of revitalize and take a deeper dive into the neighborhood concept of what Reading's all about, because Reading has unique neighborhoods unto itself. And some are progressing better than others, some are more organized than others. And I really liked to be a part of this grassroots effort. It was, we were friends right out of the box. I mean, it was really an open, honest group of people. They talked about what they liked, what they saw, how they feel about their neighborhood, and it really it made it very easy. It was really well done, and I just want to thank all of them for coming forward and helping us, because when I started to get the maps and the metrics data from Mike, I'm saying, oh, more charts to read. But they all kind of went by the wayside when we put the human effort to it. So I think they did a great job. I thank them for letting me be a part of it. And to Jeff and council, I think you've got a good document to work as a baseline.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Okay. Are there any additional comments? Just raise your hand and I'll call you out.
Yeah, Jeff, it's
Go ahead,
Marcia.
Marcia.
Can I be
Yeah.
recognized? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was really glad, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Lee. As far as respecting the neighborhoods and such, I have a peculiar situation in District 2 where one side of the street is in one district and one is in the other. I understood why that happened, but it's sort of odd for the neighbors who are very well bonded to each other. But we also know with redistricting, it's hard to keep everything balanced. My preference would be all of the 500 block of South 10th Street would be all in District 2. It isn't really that many people, but you know, whatever. It is what it is. So, and I think that was probably true of all the districts. I think what's important is for us to educate people on how important it is to recognize what district they're in and how important it is for them to know where they need to vote. Because people don't always identify themselves as being part of precincts. They more look at themselves as being part of neighborhoods. So just something for the future.
All right. Any
And
additional?
I will say to,
Yeah, go ahead, Lori. Go ahead.
thanks. I will say, Marcia, that we were very confined by the precincts. I mean,
Right.
precincts are not defined by us. We had to define the districts by precincts.
Right.
So, and that was actually one of the early questions that we had was if precincts change, should we make sure that that doesn't happen before we choose these districts? And all of those things, we considered so many different options like that and made sure that there wasn't something beyond just the precincts and the districts the way they are now that we needed to think about and consider. The commission as a whole was really, really very thorough, and we would be also available for the public hearing if you have any other questions, or if you would like us there to address the public's concerns. I'm sure most of us will be able to be there either virtually or in person if we're at that point. So.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Lori, for as many members that could attend the hearing. That would be extremely helpful. Questions are liable to come up that we may not be able to answer. And that never looks good.
I would be happy to be there.
Yeah, all right, appreciate that. Additional comments, anyone? Again, just raise your hand so I can see. At the moment, I can't see anything for some reason, but yeah, if anybody has comments, I think I have the full screen back. All right.
Yeah, there are no comments.
All right, if there are no other comments, I want to thank the commission, every member, and the supporting staff as well. Really an important task that we do every 10 years to keep our electoral system balanced and fair so that everyone gets almost as close as equal representation as we can get. Of course, these numbers change daily. So all we can do is take a snapshot every 10 years and try to be as equitable as possible. And that way we never want people, and I think everybody on the commission that's part of the selection process, is we wouldn't want anybody to feel disenfranchised or in any way kept out of the process, because it's important. Otherwise, people won't get involved, right? I mean, that's critical. You want people to believe it's a fair process so that they stay involved. All right, well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work on behalf of the body. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, council, we are going to move on to the next item on our, somehow I lost, there it is. What did I do? No, I'm at the bottom of it. Here we go. The next item on our agenda is going to be a discussion about charter board costs. Yeah, I'll just start off with some thoughts. I have a little bit of an idea on how we proceed with this. My recommendation is, we asked Mike, perhaps in conjunction with Fred, to take a look at a couple options with the charter board. We have, I don't know if anybody has the cost. Linda, do you have the cost by chance for the previous, say, 2 or 3 years? That's one of the items we can pull.
I do not.
All right.
I don't have that on me.
Yeah, we can get that information. Find out, what options we do have. Is there maybe a better way of formulating the charter board? Are the costs really out of, reasonable? Yeah, Michelle's saying she can provide that to us tomorrow. Are they out of, kind of reasonable construct for what we need them to be? A lot of that's going to be based on the cost. I would like to try to gather, the number of complaints for 19, 20, 21, the cost for 19, 20, 21, before we go down a long and windy road. And in the meantime, we could gather information from each council member on how they feel the charter board could be better used, better operated, maybe there's a better overall structure. The charter board is a charter requirement, and any major changes to the charter board would require a referendum, if I'm correct. I may be going too far. I think Mike's agreeing with me. So, and we'll regroup on this issue maybe in a week or two. In the meantime, I'll ask Mike and Fred to have just small conversations about options. And then once we gather that data, but I am going to ask anybody who has any recommendations. You might have a better idea once we get some of the caseloads and costs. Read the chart on the charter board, and then, talk to Linda about it, share your recommendations. We'll try to compile them, and we'll see if it's something we even want to encounter. I mean, we may go through a very short process and say, for now, it is what it is. We may say, hey, this is too much. We may say, hey, there's a better way. We may say, hey, there's not a better way. So this has just been here because it's something we've crossed over the last few years. I'll let Fred speak briefly to it about, some of his thoughts and concerns, and then we'll open it up. Go ahead, Fred.
Thanks, thanks, Jeff. What you just suggested was exactly what I had suggested on the phone to Mike before the meeting started, that he and I would get together, and we, of course, want to hear from all the council members and members of the administration. I would say, though, that I do think there are ways that we can amend the charter board ordinance that council does have control over, to tweak the process so that it's no longer this game of gotcha where you do something and you go after somebody and you find them. You could still have fines and penalties for people that refuse to comply with the lawful order of the charter board, but most of our expenses come from people, from the fact that people have a right to defend themselves when they have penalties against them, and a lot of these issues that originally came up would be moot at this point, dealing with the former administration, but we're still litigating them because there's penalties attached to them, and penalties that happened because not because they refused to comply with the charter board, but just because they ultimately lost, and the conduct that happened before the complaint is litigated for years. And that's what happened in 2 administrations ago as well, where there was things that could have been worked out. And I think if we have a process that's a little bit closer to, I think, what was envisioned, which was something other than the courts to hash things out, but that don't have these high stakes, and then we could still take things to court. There are some issues that do need to be worked out in the court system. Some things do have very, very high stakes and are worth spending some money on, but it doesn't have to be the way it is now. And I think that's something we could address.
And Fred, if you could, just for kind of the newer members, just speak briefly about what the charter board's role is and how some of those things get caught up in high costs at that level and then end up costing even more at a court level. So we're almost doing kind of a double jeopardy, am I right?
Yeah, basically anyone can file a complaint alleging that anybody, whether it's a member of council, whether it's a member of the administration, violated any section of the charter. There are some limitations, but a lot of it is pretty benign or mundane topics, but are serious and important. And what happens is you then have an investigation, and we pay for the attorney to do the investigation. It then could go to a hearing if it's not resolved at the investigation stage. And there's a hearing in front of the charter board. We pay for their solicitor, we pay for our solicitor, and depending, and the charter board's taking a position that our office can't represent city employees because we're somehow also representing the charter board. So we've had to pay for outside attorneys to represent city officials to basically just decide whether there was a charter violation. And typically that would happen in court, and a judge would make a decision. And then if you don't comply, the judge could hold you in contempt. Here, they issue penalties right off the bat. And then we end up in this protracted litigation. At the end of the day, you end up in the court system where you would have started, where we could have started from the beginning. So I think there's a good place for the charter board. I think if it's tweaked a little bit, it could be a useful tool that the city could take advantage of without the high costs and without the acrimony. It's something where, hey, you can make a complaint, and say to the person you're making the complaint to, because the other thing is there's confidentiality. It makes it seem like it's this criminal aspect to it, or what you're doing, whether you're the accuser or the accused, that you've done something terrible, when a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding. And I think if we could tweak it so that it's an open, fair process for everybody involved, gets faster results. Because the other thing is these, just to get to the hearing usually takes 6 to 9 months. So I think there's a way to do it so that it's a very useful tool for the city to resolve things. And aside from that, now council has their own solicitor, so there's other venues. I don't think the charter board's as needed as it used to be. I think a lot of times my office would make a decision and then the charter board would kind of be the second opinion. I think here now, Mike and I can work together and maybe avoid a lot of the costs as well. So I think there's things aside from an ordinance amendment. I think just the way we handle our business can cut the costs.
Okay, good, Fred. Thank you. That was a good overview. I'm going to go to Donna first for any questions or comments. Then anyone else, please raise your hand. That's fine.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, obviously I was involved in one of those charter matters that took on a life of its own. And from the original concern that I had and what I had filed, the charter board then took it to many more levels from that original complaint. And of course, we all know what happened with the amount of money involved in that. So I think as this is being looked at, and again, I leave that to law because I'm not an attorney, but is there any way to preclude the charter board from, I wouldn't say exacerbating, but taking a complaint and growing it to the point that that particular situation involved?
Yeah, I think
cost us all that money.
we could look into that as a part of an amendment to the ordinance. But I think also if you take out the retroactive fines and you make it so that the only way you're fined is if you disobey the order of the charter board. So if you say the solicitor can't have a beard and that's part of the charter, I shouldn't have to go shave or turn out, oh, he has a beard, so he's going to get a penalty. I should be able to take it to the charter board, and if the charter board decides yeah, the solicitor can't have a beard, then I'll go shave.
But I mean, when the charter board takes that original complaint and then adds because of probably the investigation portion or whatever that was.
And I think a lot of times that the initial appeal to the Court of Common Pleas comes from the subject, not the charter board. But the charter board takes it to the Commonwealth Court a couple times. And there's not much you can do once it gets into that. There might be a way to make it so that that they wouldn't get involved. But I think what I'm saying is, if we were to tweak the way the fines are distributed, so then I think a lot of the appeals wouldn't happen in the first place. I think people would say, okay, I did something. I still think I'm right, but it's not worth fighting. I'll just change what I'm doing and not have to worry about any fines. Or they might appeal it, and then you're back. But in that case, you're where you would be anyway, letting a judge decide whether there was a charter violation. And if at the end of the day, it's ruled to be a violation and you continue to do it, you're going to get fined and penalized the same way you would if it went originally to court. So I think that's the way things could be improved. And I think that would address what your concern is, but there might be another way to address it as well.
All right, so, yeah, just to kind of underscore what Fred's saying, we want to find maybe a middle ground where we can control the costs a little bit, still leave a lot of the effective remedy elements of the charter board without having this protracted exposure to these unrealistic costs, in some cases. So I think sharing ideas, understanding what the charter board role is, sharing ideas with Linda and getting them all compiled, and then we'll get a report back from Fred, and we'll have a chance to discuss it again, and then get an understanding from Fred and Mike, what some recommendations could be. Additional comments or questions, please just raise your hand and I'll call on you. If there are none at this time, it's good to finally take this issue up. Fred, I told you we would try to get to it. So it's fair to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's fair to the city to do that because it's just something we have. Anytime we can contain costs without impeding our process and keeping open channels available, then we're doing all right. If there are no other comments, Linda and I talked about scheduling a retreat. Yeah, I think it's a little, before I go, so if I have a complaint on Frank, I could just call him up and tell him whatever I want. Is that what you said, Fred? Is that what I heard? Save a lot of time.
Yeah, I don't know who would complain about Frank, but if you did, you would, yeah, it would be out in the open, and you would know what it was. Because I remember in the past, even as a member of the law department, we didn't know what the complaints were. So everybody was like racing to these like crazy conclusions as to what kind of, conspiracy was afoot. And then they unseal, because if you remember the 2 administrations ago, there was the court sealing and all that. So we're like, what could be so crazy? What is it? What's behind this veil? And then you pull it back and you're like, that's it. And that's what all that money was spent on. And I think, and Donna, just to go back to what you said, I think one way to look at it is some of the things that we're spending money on right now. If we didn't have the retroactive fines, they'd be moot at this point, because it would be a previous administration. Same thing with some of the stuff against 2 administrations ago. I think if you recall, it stopped. Like they removed one person, they shuffled the people around, but the cases kept going because there was significant fines against the former mayor, and he had every right to defend himself, and he won ultimately.
All right, well, thank you, Fred. This next item, scheduling a retreat. I talked to Linda. I think we want to wait on a new managing director. I don't want to put any more in Frank right now than what we got. We're trying to get our council schedule straightened out with Frank, as he's taken on a lot of stuff. Frank, your thoughts on that? Unless you feel otherwise.
I think that's a very good idea. There'd be a great opportunity when the new managing director's on board, wherever that may be. A retreat would probably be a great way to start the process of getting to know who that person is and developing that cohesiveness between the administration and council. So more to follow. We are definitely working on the recruitment process of advertising this position, but we'll have more of an update at the next committee of the whole when we do the HR report on a timeline of what we may see for a candidate for the managing director's position.
All right, thank you. Okay, council, then we're going to move on to council agenda review. This evening's meeting there. Linda, do we have hold on a second. We have Pastor Daniel Myers from Community Evangelical Church. We don't have any are there any proclamations and presentations this evening?
Yes, Johanny added one for Ashley Giddens.
Yeah, I remember signing it. Okay, so Johanny, you're going to read that for us, I'm assuming?
Yes, I will. I'll be happy to.
Okay, great. All right. Anybody signed up, Linda, for public comment?
Yes, we have 5. 1 is on non-agenda and 4 are on agenda topics.
Are they all going to be speaking live?
They're all, yes, connecting to the Zoom meeting.
All right. Can you tell us what the topics are, just so we're briefed in? At least I have an idea.
The first is email direction for employees and vacant property registration. And then the 4 on agenda topics are about the parking authority.
Not the parking authority. Okay, great. So we'll ask Donna to read our public comment guidelines. And we'll go into our public speakers. From there, we'll go into the approval of our agenda and minutes. Couple minutes there listed. Then well, part of the approval of the agenda and minutes, we're going to make 1 or 2 amendments, I believe, to the agenda. Shoot, Linda, let me write them down then. First, I'll go through the consent agenda items. Award a contract for pagoda wall and stairs, structural and geotechnical engineering, construction administration, active inspections, and bid assistance to Johnson, Murmurin, and Thompson in Cockeysville, Maryland, at the submitted price of $643,097. There is $1 million for this project in the capital improvements budget. Any comments or questions on this specific item? It's obviously a pretty important item. We just want to, I believe this, go ahead, Marcia.
And I think we have on the agenda for our March meeting, a discussion of the pagoda. And I think that's the time that maybe the administration can be prepared to go into more detail about what this project entails and
Right.
the timeline for it.
Yep. Any additional comments? All right, if not, the next.
Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead, Johanny.
Johanny here. So it says there is $1 million allocated from the capital improvement budget. Where is the rest of the money going to be coming from?
Well, we're actually exceeding we're actually under the budgeted amount, if I read that correctly. So that money will sit in the capital improvement budget. If it remains as a residual, we'll end up switching it around either mid-year somewhere or when we do the new capital budget at the end of the year, typically what we do. So we've kind of over budgeted in this case. So it'll remain in that line item until it's either moved.
Because I'm asking also because I know we have the ARP funds. And I remember Pagoda being obviously
Yeah, that's right. So
a project that we wanted to work on. Okay.
we may use the residual dollars there towards the next pagoda project. That's correct. That's a good point. Did somebody, Maria, were you getting ready to make a comment?
No, I was gonna ask the same question that Johanny did, because I know at the last meeting with the ARPA money, I believe that, I don't know which council member mentioned that
Yeah.
money can be used for the pagoda. Yep.
Yep. It's certainly a legacy project under consideration, and we're going to get into more of that when we get into the ARP discussions.
So if the administration along with council decided to use that money, so the city then we say the $1 million, right?
Well, it's
The
still,
capital-
no, I mean, just assume we reclassified a bunch of money into, we're going to spend $1 million from somewhere. If we reclassify money from ARPA and we put some into the capital budget, either way, we'll be spending the $1 million out of the city coffers. So, but the other pagoda project that everyone's referring to is more the internal and the building overall. That's going to be a much bigger project.
Okay.
This is just for the walls and the stairwell.
Jeff, Jamar has his hand up.
Yep, go ahead, Jamar, and then Frank.
Also, just wanted to clarify, this covers the structural and geotechnical engineering for the wall and the stairs. It does not cover the actual construction to repair the wall and the stairs. It's just.
So we may need more money, right? Okay, good.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Jamar. Frank?
I just want to say Jamar had his hand up. That's all. Jamar covered it.
Thanks, Frank. Okay. All right, any other comments or questions on that awarded contract? All right, the next item is a resolution directing the city solicitor to execute and submit the forms approving the repository bids for 337 Spring Garden Street, 217 Pear Street, and 633 South 17th Street. Anybody have any comments or questions about those three properties? All right, if not, the next item on the consent agenda is a resolution authorizing the actuarial valuation for 2022 through 2023 from Conrad Siegel for the police, fire, and officers and employee pension funds. We had a chance, I guess that was just last week, to review those numbers. Anybody have any comments or questions about that resolution? All right, if not, we're going to move on to the next resolution under the consent agenda, waiving the financial security requirement as per saldo section 515-309 for the Habitat for Humanity Gateway project. And I think there's still some work that needs to be done on this one. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're going to remove that from the agenda. Is any objection to doing that? All right, we got to get the number of units correct is what I'm understanding to be the concern. All right, so we'll remove that before we vote on the agenda. The next item is a resolution authorizing the filing of a formal application and business plan for our RCAP grant in the amount of $7.5 million on behalf of the Reading Baseball LP for the First Energy Stadium renovations project. Of course, this is the money that's complementing the $3 million from the city, the $3 million from the county. I think it's about $1.5 million from the Reading Phillies themselves. And of course, that's going to be the state's contribution for the stadium project. Are there any comments or questions on that? And again, the city's $3 million there is coming from the ARPA funds as already approved. All right, if there are no comments on that resolution, we'll move on to the next resolution authorizing the engagement agreement between the City of Reading and Education Works for the creation of the City of Reading Climate Corps. How much was that commitment again? So it's I guess it's
134,000, which I believe is a separate ordinance that's being introduced, I believe.
Correct.
Is that total 134,000 over a couple of years?
Well, that's the city's commitment for this first pilot year. And then if successful, which we anticipate, there'll be some additional costs, but not as expensive. And we would have to come back to council with that unless we budget it. We may be able to put that action in a line item budget. We'll probably have those numbers ahead of time. So that may be part of the budget process, but it won't be 134,000. It'll be scaled back. This is the initial seed investment. It really magnifies the contributions from like the private foundations of the William Penn Foundation and other funding entities. So we're just contributing a portion of the total cost of this program.
Yeah, and we're going to get a more formal allocation via ordinance for those funds eventually, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, the next item under the consent agenda, that's it. Okay, so we'll remove letter D, I'm sorry, and then we'll vote on the agenda and the minutes and the consent agenda items as we approve the agenda and minutes. And then we'll go into the administrative report. I'm assuming, Frank, you'll be giving the report this evening.
That is correct.
All right, and then we have a report from our city auditor. There are no reports this evening from boards, authorities, and commissions. So we'll move right into ordinances for final passage. The first bill being 106-2021, amending the city code chapter 23, part 1201, downtown revitalization of public-private partnership. I think we're still on hold with this.
Correct.
All right, so we'll just need to table this again. And then the next ordinance, Frank, are we tabling that as well?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not going to be voting on number 5-2022 this evening either. I guess you're waiting on providing additional information.
That's correct. We'll have additional information to provide council for their consideration.
All right. Any comments or questions on those two? They're still kind of on audio hold.
Yeah, I have a question. Why are we still tabling it? For what specific reason?
Frank wants to get us a little more information before we proceed with voting on it. And I'm not clear on the information, but when he's ready to prepare that, I guess.
Well, when we initially made this proposal, I was still assigned at that office. So we have to come back to the body to add some additional information for consideration. So there's more to follow shortly. So we'll make sure that will be an agenda, maybe a cow item to discuss a little further.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Fred, did you have your hand up? It's up. You got to say something. No, you don't. I'm only kidding. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll move on to the next ordinance. Is bill number 13-2022, authorizing the transfer of $65,000 to the council budget from the general fund balance to cover expenses associated with the 275th anniversary for a 2-year period. We approved this, I think, 2 weeks ago. I believe we did. We're just now approving the transfer of the funds, is what I'm seeing. So any comments or questions on that ordinance? All right, if not, the next item is bill number 14-2022, authorizing the appropriation of $4 million for the construction of the 9th and Marion Fire Station from the Fund 43, which is a city facilities construction fund. This fund is an enterprise fund where we put money aside for these types of construction projects, larger projects. Where, as you can tell, we're going to also be supplementing this with $5 million in ARPA funding in the next ordinance. But I think everybody's pretty clear that this money was previously put aside for this project, and it's meant for the long overdue firehouse at 9th and Marion. Any comments or questions? All right, any comments or questions on the next ordinance, which is allocating $5 million from ARPA funds for the same project? And again, it's a good legacy project for these types of funds because it will help provide, fire protection for that whole northeast neighborhood, plus keep the firemen safer as well. Throughout this, yeah, Brianna, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
I have a question for Frank. What is the balance left out of the funds?
Are you referring to what? I'm sorry, what Pacific Fund would you be referring to?
The APR.
Our ARPA funds.
Yeah.
With the remaining balance. I would probably defer Jamar, but off the top of my head, so far we've only allocated $3 million to the Reading Phillies, was about, I believe, $3 million for the Santander. And then this would be 3, 6, 11 million. This would be $11 million. So if I subtract that from 61, that would be about $50 million left in the balance, if I got that correct.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
And as you know, Bree, we're going to be spending time in the coming months going over all those, typical various applications that we can consider for that 51 million. And Wes, I didn't have a chance to talk to Wes, but if you get a chance to watch last week's meeting, you might want to take a few minutes just to look at that because we did go through those numbers. Oh, we went through the process.
Yes, I already watched it.
Numbers, but I thought he was talking. He was talking to me.
No, I was talking to Wes, but go ahead, Bree. Did you have something else?
Talking to me.
No, it's okay. I was talking to you, but I also referenced Wes. Did you have additional comments? Go ahead, Bree.
No, I think that's good for now.
Okay, good. All right, good. Yeah, Wes, I'm glad. I meant to email you and text you and ask that you look at that because there's just a whole lot of money in there and a whole lot of information. So just try to keep everybody up to speed. But good question, Bree. Let's move on to the next ordinance. Bill number 16-2022, authorizing the city to agree to a right-of-way and temporary construction easement with Berks County for the County Spring Valley Road Bridge replacement project. We did discuss this 2 weeks ago. Are there any additional comments on this ordinance? All right. The next ordinance is bill number 17-2022, approving the settlement agreement. All right, we're going to table this ordinance. We're not ready for this agreement. So when we get to G 17-2022, as everyone knows, we've asked our council solicitor to work with the city solicitor, do a little more research on the specific settlement agreement. So
yeah, I'm still compiling all the documents. I just got a last set from Fred last week. So I'm still working on reviewing everything, but I'd hope to have something for you before the next meeting.
Yeah, we figure it's going to take a couple weeks, Mike. So
okay.
It's probably like a shell game, quite honestly, but I have no comments, sorry. All right. Okay, so we have introduction of a bunch of ordinances. Oh, geez, I didn't realize there was that many. Okay, so the first one is amending the city code fee schedule section 212-216 as follows. I think this one is getting removed from the agenda. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not even going to discuss that. The administration wants to remove that, so we'll come back to that at another time. The next bill, amending the city code chapter 576, vehicle and traffic, section 420, parking against the traffic flow, by exempting vehicles parked in violation of this section due to winter weather conditions. So who wants to speak to this? It sounds like, there were some issues, I think, Marcia, up in your neighborhood.
Exactly.
People were parked on the hill. Did you want to speak to this real quick?
Well, I think that we've always found an issue in what we refer to as East Reading, everything eastward from 11th Street, Perkiomen, the hills there. And people, for safety reasons, park against the flow of traffic because it's easier for them to block their wheels, not to be able to lose control downhill. And someone did get fined for doing that. It was my understanding that the police department was not enforcing, or the parking authority, but that not being the case, we need to introduce this ordinance to be able to have that on record.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I say, you know, you can't legislate common sense, but this is one I think you need to have ordained, if you will. So people know in these specific situations, they have that flexibility for public safety, right? Okay. Any
Donna
other
has her
comments?
hand up, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say, any other comments? Donna, go ahead.
I think the other part, the time frame differential that we're looking at here to discontinue enforcement after 6 o'clock on Saturdays, I think it's incumbent upon us to consider doing that. I think we've done a lot of harm with the extension as it is into the evening and Saturday hours. I think this is a sign of good faith to our residents, to our visitors, to be a bit more lenient about timeframes, and especially as we look, you know, with kind of revenue amusement tax brings to us. If people don't feel that they can park on the street as an alternative, and then they do park on the street and get these tickets, we're going to start losing events, not just losing visitors, but losing events. And again, our residents, clearly, they're the priority, but we also have to understand that our businesses rely on visitors to the city who need their cars to come in. And we haven't done ourselves any favors by these kind of hours. So I'm hoping that council will support this and we will move forward with it.
You're under the next ordinance, which is okay. I'm going to read that real quick. And then this moved along pretty quickly, but the next ordinance that you're referring to, Don, is amending City Code Chapter 576, traffic section 503, Sunday and holidays exempted by retitling the section as hours of enforcement, and Saturday, Sundays, and holidays accepted, adding Saturday to accepted enforcement, and limiting the hours of parking zone enforcement from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. This developed rather quickly. What I want to do is invite the parking authority between now and our next meeting, Linda, either next Monday night or 2 weeks from now, just to get their input. I know there's going to be certainly an impact in revenue. We want to understand that, and that's, you know, that's fair. I want to make sure they have their input here. So anybody have any other comments on that?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm sorry to have gotten ahead of that.
That's okay. Does anybody else have any comments on that specific introduced ordinance relevant to meter parking hours? It's a sensitive issue, I get it. Johanny, go ahead.
Is it currently 8 to 6, Monday through Friday? I mean, Monday through Saturday, right?
No, there are no time limits in place currently.
Okay. What was it before? I thought before it was like 8 to 4.
It was
Before
8 to 6.
It was 6.
It has always been 8 to 6. They're just not, the hours aren't posted.
Correct. That changed a few years ago.
Okay. I mean, another thing we need to consider also, I mean, just today I was talking to a constituent who is voicing her concern for also even the tickets, right? The fines. And they're telling me, you know, 45, I think it's $45, right? We raised the prices. I don't know if we raised them from 30 to 45 or 35 to 45. I can't remember, but I know we raised the prices. So I'm getting a lot of constituent complaints saying that, you know, our community is having, they find it too expensive, pretty much. The fines are too expensive. They can't afford these fines. So I don't know if when we meet with the parking authority, I mean, we can analyze, since we've made the changes, what the outcome has been. Like, I would like to analyze and make a decision based on data and constituent concern and comments.
Yeah, I can ask Linda to get us the rates, the current rates of perhaps the top 5 violations as we know them right now, so we can maybe hit them in the same meeting.
Yeah, I can tell you too that the fines hadn't been changed since 2012.
I thought some were, Linda, no?
No, pretty much all of those have been stagnant.
Weren't some of the late fees changed?
That could be.
Yeah, let's pool for the top 5 violations, current fines and current late fees. So
Okay.
to Johanni's point, while we're talking to the authority about this issue, we can talk about that one as well. Just so we're reminded, and it'd be good for the newer members as well. Marcia, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and I wanted to echo what Donna's saying. I think because I've experienced watching this happen to people who, in all good faith, are coming into the city, wanting to have an enjoyable experience and being hit by a ticket when they come out of an experience, their choice will then be, I'm not going to come back into the city. We have major institutions like the Symphony that for years has, it's an institution for the city. I also believe we need to have an open discussion and an honest discussion with the attitudes of people that are part of the parking authority, that are part of the board. What are their goals? Okay, because I don't think there's an acceptance that some people are not ready to use the technology. And we don't want to blame and shame them for the fact that they don't understand it.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time with my husband and he's an expert at it now, but only because we spent a lot of time to say, how do you use, how do you download the app? How do you then set the app? How do you enter the number of the meter that you're at? And it takes time to get to do that. Some folks don't feel safe standing on a city street going through that whole machination in order to be able to just get into a venue to enjoy a relaxing concert. Okay, so we want to make these experiences good for them, not for them to be able to choose. The bottom line is if we don't do what we need to do with this, we're going to have the Symphony not be wanting to stay in the city, and that would be a tragedy. So,
All right,
we have to have the dialogue, but we have to look at it's not only a matter of numbers, it's a matter of other things as far as protecting our institutions.
Okay, additional comments, anyone? Just please raise your hand. I will reach out to you. All right. Okay, so we're gonna set that meeting up and we'll have a chance to cover this ordinance and perhaps, the top 5. I think Shelley did text out, Linda, that we did change them in 2021. I thought there was a recent change.
Right, that's when we changed them.
Okay.
We've not changed them. Right, before that, it was 2012.
Yeah, well, Johanny was asking were there recent changes, and there was, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go over those. We'll see what the new schedule looks like and take a look. And, if we feel like we're gonna want to change some, we'll have to talk to the authority about the impact on revenue. And I agree with a lot of people, that a little bit of revenue has a lot of downstream implications, and we have to be careful. So we'll take a closer look at it. All right, let's move on to the next ordinance, which I just lost. There we go. All right, the next one, these are all for introduction. The next one is the one we talked about earlier. Amending the budget by allocating $104,000 for the Reading Climate Corps program. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, amending the budget fund 47 ARP by allocating $150,000 for consulting expenses. Those are relative to the young lady and gentleman that were on with us last week during our ARP call. Frank or Jamar noted that even though it's 150,000, we may not, it may be a while till we hit that threshold. Certainly my meeting with them, I thought they were extremely helpful and valuable. And again, we're able to take this out of ARP funds, right? Okay. Any comments or questions on that? All right. If not, the next.
I have a question, President.
Yep, go ahead, Wesley.
So this financial security requirement for the Buttonwood Gateway project, what is, can you explain that?
Yeah. Which one are you on?
Resolution D.
Oh, we'll get to, what is it?
Oh, that's for Habitat for Humanity. That's being withdrawn.
Does that mean we're not approving it, or?
I'm sorry, guys. Where are we at?
That being tabled.
Right, guys. Before we go, what resolution? What item are we speaking about?
It's I believe it's on the front page.
Oh, I got you, Wes.
We passed it already. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Resolution.
are delaying that. We're just pulling it for now. We are going to be approving that eventually, but right now there's a little dispute on the number of properties. So we
Alright.
can't necessarily vote on it tonight till we get it cleaned up. So we're going to be removing it from the consent agenda, so we really won't be voting on it, but it will be reintroduced shortly.
The wording is going to change too. They're not waiving financial security in its entirety. They're just offering a different form of financial security. So we'll have that updated before the next meeting.
Is that helpful? All right, Wes, thank you. All right, going back then to the ordinances for introduction, let me get back there. All right. Where were we here? The next one is amending Personnel Code 70-701. Salary administration by increasing the salary ranges as follows. And again, this is just increasing the ranges. This is not increasing the actual salaries, at least at this point. Chief of Police for the city of Reading shall be compensated at an annual salary of no less than 80,000 and no more than 135,000. CD Director, the Director of the City Department of Community and Economic Development, blah, 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 for the city of Reading shall be compensated at a salary no less than 75,000 and no more than 120,000. Now, these are just introductions. We could certainly comment on tonight. When we approve ranges, we are not approving anybody's salary. We are just updating our salary ranges for these two positions, but I'll open it up to comments or questions at this point. Marcia?
Yeah, I would prefer that we split this into two separate bills.
But can I just explain why we're doing this? The ranges, we've exceeded the ranges when we passed the position ordinance, which,
Okay,
so it's the increase has already been improved. That's why they're only being increased a little bit. It's just enough to cover what was approved in December.
so it's a housekeeping issue more than it is.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, well, then that helps me. Okay.
Yeah, it won't affect their, I'm
Okay.
sorry, it won't affect their salaries at all.
I
Okay.
have a question. I don't,
Bree, I mean, just put your hand up, please. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Bree. That's fine.
I
just wanted-
had a question and I forgot to put my hand up. So
It's okay.
what was I gonna ask? Oh my God. Never mind.
We'll come back to it. Raise your hand if you have a comment. We're gonna go to Johanny. Go ahead, Johanny.
Frank, not Frank, I'm sorry, Fred. So I want to understand. So we approved a position ordinance, right, for this year's budget with existing salaries. And are you saying that we have exceeded the amount that we are compensating these two positions? I want to understand.
Yeah, the salary, we should have done the salary range at the same time, and that wasn't caught, so we have to do it now.
So are we then giving additional increases to these positions?
No, I mean, because you've already approved the salary amounts, so this would just bring the range in line with the.
So our ranges.
I'm still unclear. I'm
Yeah, what
sorry,
he's
I'm
saying-
unclear.
What he's saying, Johanny, is the salaries are currently exceeding the ranges. And because of that, we are out of compliance. We got to get the ranges in compliance. Is that correct, Fred?
Correct.
So it means that the current position holders are already getting paid more than what we allocated. Is that, I want to make it very clear.
Well, you allocated, there's two things. There's a position ordinance where you set the salaries, and we discussed that at length in November, December, when we set the budget. At that time, and nobody caught this, but we should have increased the ranges as well. And we're doing that now because it wasn't done before. Basically, it's like was mentioned, it was a housekeeping measure to bring us in line with where it needs to be.
But it's for the individual, not necessarily the position.
This is actually more for the position, is that each director has a range they're allowed to be paid by. It's in the personnel code. So if you go to the personnel code, you'll see the solicitor, I think, is like 85 to 110. And in this case, when they raised the salaries in December, when the budget was passed and the position ordinance was passed with these salaries, the amount that was approved was exceeded the ranges, which we now have, so we now have to amend the ranges.
Yeah, so Johanny, the budget allocation denotes the spending for the positions. For director positions, we also have salary ranges. We typically amend them at the same time any salary adjustments would go on if they exceed the existing range. What happened during the budget is we didn't capture these two changes and make sure that they got adjusted accordingly.
Yeah, and the salary they will be making, unless council approves that additional salary, which again, you would have to approve it by ordinance, is going to be the same. We just need to change the range to reflect the higher amount they're being paid now, which was again approved by council in December.
Any additional questions okay, so I think that kind of debunks your concern, Marcia, a little bit.
I actually do have, and I had my hand up.
All right, go ahead, and then we'll go to Bree. Go ahead, you're
Okay.
first.
Okay, so, I maybe minimized it when I said it was housekeeping. That is fairly much of a concern of mine, is that wasn't caught as far as the ranges being in compliance with the budget. I'm glad that it was, but my question is, have we gone through now every single salary to make sure everything's within range? Because we caught these two, but do we need to now revisit the whole salary range to make sure everything's in compliance?
These were the two. It only applies to directors, so there's only about a half dozen or so that.
Okay, go ahead, Bree.
Why wasn't this caught beforehand?
That's a good point. I think it's something that we'll have to be extra careful of every time we approve a budget to make sure that the salary ranges, we'll have to look at them for each director position beforehand.
Yeah, and budget season can be a busy time, so it's government's never perfect, but to everyone's point, it should be done at the same time. But key is that we caught it and we were able to get it adjusted. I guess it's Johanny and then Donna. Go ahead, Johanny.
Which is why, if you all remember, right, I asked a lot of questions. I think I was the only no vote regarding the salary position ordinances because I knew there were some things that didn't add up and didn't make sense, especially with the community development director position where everything is like piecemeal. So you don't get a real clear picture of what the total salary is. And I remember asking for clarity and asking for things to be like lumped so that we can see it before we make decisions on it. I hate when we make these kind of mistakes, right? And it almost, and I'm not trying to, I don't like these type of oversights because we put a lot of work into the budget. And I know that I pointed out some of these things and here we are.
Yeah, and it's more of an oversight than a mistake. I mean, what we could do every year is make sure for those 6 positions, we include those salary ranges on the position ordinance so that we have them side by side. That would be my suggestion to some, if we could administratively do that. It's no way, because there's a lot of moving parts at budget season. We're asking them to get us new information on that and this, we're trying to update it. We got that what's that list we keep?
The parking lot.
The parking lot to deal with it. It is a lot. I don't think we've ever gone through a budget season and have been perfect, but to your point, Johanny, for the directors, we should have that information there. Donna?
Just a question here regarding this and anything else that might come up. With all due respect, we have such a good auditor in Maria. Maria, is this something your review would catch, or how do we interact with you on this as you're really the oversight for all the numbers?
Yes, I do, but because with all the fiasco that was going on with the payroll, that I wasn't getting payroll and stuff like that, I did catch it up before, about this time by me not receiving payroll, not reviewing payroll for a couple of months, and I did talk, Fred and myself, we talk about it, after I started getting the payroll, and Fred mentioned it to me too, so.
Is that being corrected now?
Well, if after
The payroll
this-
issue, yes.
After this ordinance is approved, everything should be fine.
Okay, good, because we really depend on you, Maria, and I know you would catch a lot of
All right, if there are no other comments on that issue, we're gonna move on again. We won't vote on that for another 2 weeks. Bree, did you get, yeah, she got your comment? Yes, okay. All right, I should make sure I didn't miss anyone. The next ordinance being introduced is authorizing the installation of an all-way stop sign at the intersection of Buttonwood and North Second Street in accordance with City Code Section 576-213. I am still training myself to stop there, just so you know. Might want to give it a couple more weeks before you consider it really safe, but yeah, what's challenging about that intersection, and especially at night, even though there's a stop sign there, it's not real bright. And sometimes it's hard for me to see people. So it's certainly well needed, and it's hopefully giving people safer passage. Go ahead, Donna.
Would it be, and I'm not sure what the traffic regulations are in that particular street, but would it make sense to have a flashing light with that stop sign as we see in many areas?
They did have one for a while right on top of the stop sign. I don't know if it's gone now or not.
Those are very helpful.
Just take a while for people to get used to it. It has slowed
Such a
traffic.
heavily used street.
It has slowed traffic a little bit. I've noticed certain times, rush hour in the morning. But generally it's made things safer. So it's something they've fought for a long time. So additional comments? All right, we'll vote on that. And the stop sign's already up, so I wouldn't vote against that one. Anyway, the next ordinance is authorizing the installation of an all-way stop sign on North 13th and Perry. I'm assuming this one's already up as well.
Correct.
In accordance with City Code Section 576-213. And that was the one block that didn't have one? Is that correct?
There are two, well, there's two others. There's none at 13th and Amity and none at 13th and Robinson.
Okay, so this is right right after those two, right?
Right, in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, that's good. It'll slow traffic down too for all three of those blocks. Any comments or questions?
Jeff, I have one.
Yep, go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, and this doesn't pertain to the ordinance being introduced, but I'd like a report back from the administration regarding 18th and Perkiomen, which I know is a city or a state road, but it's a very dangerous intersection. And we did have a near serious injury, but it could have been a fatality. And it's just an impossible intersection with the playground and all of it's being, children crossing back and forth, people speeding down that street at incredible. There's nothing to slow people down when they go from 19th to 17th Street. So I would ask the administration to give a report back on what can be done for that intersection.
Yeah, I was just actually up at Pandora no more than a week ago and pulling out. I came out of that 18th and Cotton.
18th and Perky, yeah.
Yeah, 18th and Perk, and I was on my way to 18th and Cotton, so I was going across, and yeah, it felt very dangerous. And there was a truck actually parked there too on that corner, which made it so much worse. And people, if they don't get the red light at 19th Street, then they're really flying, right? Some people. And, we had that tragedy, last year. So any additional comments on that ordinance?
Yeah, and Shelley put something in the chat room for you all to read as far as I think she living close to that intersection is really familiar with some of the issues.
Yeah.
I believe we looked at that and PennDOT looked at it. I don't remember the contents of that report, but I will work with Kyle because it had to do with people who were here were part of it. So I'll retrieve that as a starting point. I'm not saying that was an end point, but at least a starting point where things got left off. So I'll work with Kyle and come back, whatever proper forum to provide that information.
Excuse me, Frank.
Yes, go ahead, Bree. All right.
Sorry. Excuse me, Frank. My question is, you guys have a board that looks at the streets that confirms or that can confirm like what streets are possibly dangerous, or is that just something that like an individual resident would report that back to you and then you guys say, okay, we'll take a look at it?
I believe about a year ago, and I'll have to defer to the colleagues here, that there was a talk about or a study or about dangerous intersections. I believe the police department were involved in public works. I believe we came up with a list of dangerous intersections at some point, and we had that as part of a public forum. I don't know. I think we identified what they were, and we had discussions on how we were going to address them. And what I can do is retrieve that report, because I don't have that directly, to see where things are at. There may be a good conversation too, to see where we left off from the last time we met with council, because there was a lot of steps to be taken in prioritizing what dangerous intersections we looked at first. So I can look for that also. And that can be part of the conversation in general. Would you like?
Marie, I can ask Linda to forward that to you and Wes as well. Go ahead, Brenda.
I believe I have it. I have it somewhere in like that. Just as a concerned citizen, I know some residents had concerns about, certain intersections, and they were worried about that. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation about that now, because I feel like that's something that would be, something that is near and dear to my heart too, because we are having so many incidents where individuals, specifically kids and children of all ages, are crossing the street. And I think maybe I want to say, I don't know the exact number, but we do have an issue with that, at least maybe one every couple years or so, that pops in our news feed. So yeah, I definitely have that information. And my follow-up question to this is, Frank, is that just your department, or is there like a specific, I would think like this would be like at the Reading Parking Authority problem, like the Reading Parking Authority, they come to mind as someone that would be, maybe.
Right, specifically to the list that was created, there are multi-departments involved. I know the chief of police was involved. I believe Public Works was involved through their information. And I imagine that the RPA had some input. So it was multi-departmental. I do believe that the police department took the lead in that initiative and provided the bulk of information based on a lot of data and from their traffic enforcement experience, in conjunction with traffic studies that Public Works might have conducted in the past, and RPA's ticketing experience. So, but I believe the police department was the lead group, but it was multi-departmental approach. So
Bree, to your point, we can maybe get it on the agenda in a couple months and revisit it and see what we were able to do and what the most dangerous intersections were, and talk about where we feel there might be some other need, because you're right, the population of the city's increased pretty dramatically, and a lot of those are children. That 18th and Cotton is 18th and Perk is a very dangerous intersection, very dangerous. And both of them were hit there about a year ago, right? So
it was a couple of years ago. I was like in my early 20s when that happened. I'm now getting close to my late 20s, so that it was a couple of years ago. But that's like a recurring theme that seems to happen every couple of years that I want to kind of mitigate.
Sure. All right. Well, we'll Linda, remind me to post where we're at in May to start looking in June, and maybe we can get it on there. Okay. Okay, let's move on, guys. I think that was the final ordinance for introduction. We've got 3 appointments tonight. I'm going to do them all together now and during the meeting. The first is Beatrice Gonzalez to the Youth Commission, representing District 2. William Dorward to the Equal Business Opportunity Board, and Charles Jones as an alternate to the Zoning Hearing Board. Anybody have any comments regarding those nominees? And again, you have an opportunity during the meeting as well. Comments, anyone? No? All right, good. Okay, before we adjourn for a regular meeting, is there anything for public discussion that you want to cover now? Any topics you want to bring up? Again, you'll have time during the meeting to offer any comments as well. So if there's something pressing that anybody needs to review that we didn't cover this evening, here's an opportunity. Go ahead, Johanny.
Just to put on our radar, I guess for future discussion, because I try to relay messages from constituents to the best of my ability. I've had constituents talking about the water and the meter, the surcharges for properties that are vacant. I know that as council years ago, we determined that fee, and it's a fee that's shared by all consumers, whether you use the water or not, because it covers the cost of pipes, sewer pipes, etc. But again, I'm just putting it out there because another constituent at some point will come forth to speak to council regarding his issues, his concerns, and his thoughts regarding the matter.
Yeah, again, that's an item. I think it's been a while since we've had a water authority meeting with the water authority. Linda, let's try to schedule that later in May, early June as well. I think it's a good time to raise some of those questions, get an update on because there's a lot on a water bill. It's good for all council members, kind of get a review of that, and then just talk about the water authority overall. Where are they at financially? Where are they from a capital standpoint? We know there's a couple things going on there. So I think it's a good time for a face-to-face meeting with them. And then we'll put a good slot of time down, Johanny, so that we can cover the bill as well. So I think that's a good topic. Thank you. And then, you know, because we ought to be a little more armed for our constituents. However, I can tell you that bill's so complicated, you know, unless you master it, we almost have to refer them to the authority to get clarity, but we can gain some good clarity for ourselves, at least for an interim period, because I forget it a week later. You might retain it a little better than me. And we can always recap it too in our notes. So we have it.
Well, Jeff, before
Brianna, go ahead. Just remind everyone to raise your hand. Anybody else? Brianna?
So before we move forward, do you think that seems a little long for an inquiry for a constituent? Don't you think like May is, that's if I'm a resident and I'm worried about, you know, my bills and such, waiting until May just seems like so, like.
Yeah, no, I understand. But Brianna, as you know, we went over our committee, the whole schedule a couple of weeks ago. There have been so many topics that have been deferred that we've booked the agenda pretty much through early May. If a constituent has a concern, we can certainly do some legwork outside of that briefing to get them more information. Linda and Shelley are always available to help constituents, and the water authority as well will gladly go over the bill with them.
And
I just, you know, we might be able to squeeze it in before then. Right now, we're trying to make sure that the topics that we have listed that we're going to be able to get to, but you know, we'll try to see if we can get it sooner. But no constituent has to wait for us in May. We can, you know, we can get them some interim information that'll give them real good clarity. I think what we ought to do is request from the water authority to, and maybe we'll do this in May, produce an insert that explains the bill in detail, why they have the charge, where it comes from, what it's used for. They may already do that, I don't know. But sorry, Bree, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering if there was any other help that we could give to them.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we can refer them to the authority, or we can, you know, Shelley or Linda will help you out or help any council member out if there's a constituent that really needs clarity right away. We can go extract that from the authority. I think part of our recommendation is to get kind of a bill explanation. I don't know how much of that exists on the bill now. I pay mine online. I don't even see the bill. But go ahead, Johanny.
And then just a reminder, and I think, Jeff, you might have brought this up some meetings ago regarding rent, right? And price gouging. And just a reminder to the body that I know we have to talk about that at a later meeting, come up with something that helps make sure that rents aren't being exacerbated, if you will.
Yeah, I'll look at the agendas with Linda and see if we can get these two squeezed in somewhere. Yeah, that rent issue is a big issue. I don't know what local controls we can institute or not, but we got to at least talk about the topic because people are getting killed and some people are taking advantage of the inflationary world, if you will, which is unfortunate. I mean, you certainly have the right to make your money, but not take advantage of people. All right, anything else for public discussion before we're going to take a.
Jeff.
Yeah.
2 points. One for clarity of process. When you say raise your hand, does it mean raise your hand virtually with the hand through the Zoom meeting, or does it mean raising your hand physically?
I personally prefer raising your hand physically, but either one's fine. I've got my screen fixed now where I can see most people. And my mic is open at all times anymore. I can't wait to get out of this Zoom environment. I think it will make it easier for all of us, especially the newer people. It's almost unfair to start your tenure on a Zoom meeting. I feel bad for Bree and Wes because this isn't the best place to do business. We're trying.
And that was my next question is, do we have firm plans now? We talked about our second full meeting in March to move back into council chambers. I noted
Well, I
that
know Frank told us.
Can I
last week-
complete?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to note that the CDC does have up on their website for Berks County a change in ranking to put us in the green zone. They're using different metrics, hospitalizations, but according to those metrics and being in the green zone, it does not require indoor masking, and there is no reference it anymore to social distancing. So I just wanted to clarify that with Jeremy Shearfuss.
Yeah, and Frank is going to be meeting with him, I think, this week.
On Wednesday, we wanted to do it today, but for scheduling and the mayor's availability, we'll be meeting, the mayor and myself will be meeting with the emergency management team, which is led by Jeremy Searfalls. And we're going to take a look at the whole emergency declaration to see the status on how we proceed with that, because that really impacts everything we just talked about. And then that information will be readily available once a decision is made very quickly after that meeting. And we'll send that over to the council. So,
Okay.
and we'll take it from there. So we kind of see where the trends are going. I don't want to make a decision based on, we haven't had that meeting yet, but I think we see a trend going on here. So I don't expect many surprises on what direction we're probably going to take. It's going to be consistent, probably what you've already been hearing. But we'll wait for a formal recommendation on Wednesday so the mayor can make a final decision on the emergency declaration in general.
Yeah, and before I go to Donna, we need sound reasoning, I think, where we can't meet. I mean, I've been into a couple of restaurants that were packed. I see high school basketball games that are packed. I just feel like there's a broad-based spectrum right now of what people are doing and what people are not doing. And it seems like part of the world hasn't caught up to most of the world. And people they want us back in person. They want public business done in public. And then, I didn't read the latest CDC thing, but it sounds like they're pretty much giving us the direction as well. So thank you for that, Marcia. Sorry for cutting you off. Donna, did you have a comment?
I do, because I just want to express my frustration. A while back, I had my virtual hand up and you went through about 3 people and just totally didn't see it. Now all of a sudden you see it. I mean, gotta have some consistency here. I don't even want to comment on what I had planned to comment on before, but it's very frustrating and very, very insulting not to be recognized when you're doing the protocol that you had asked us to do.
Was that it? Okay, yeah. So again, I go back to this I have full computer functionality here, mic functionality. Even when people put their hands up, I can't even always see them. I'm getting better. And that's why I want to get out of the Zoom world completely. We're not going to go into hybrid. We're going to go into live meetings, and then people will be raising their hands, requested to speak to. I can see everybody, and we'll move forward. You can blame me, but I want to get out of this thing. That's why I say, Frank,
follow, Jeff. It's frustrating when you're trying to do the right thing and it's like, well, who the hell?
I get it. Understand. So Frank, put a lot of heat on that little committee on Wednesday if you can. Put a lot of heat. Go ahead, Johanny.
We'll be able to make a decision after the meeting.
Johanny and then Brianna. So go
I
ahead.
think Brianna was first. I saw her hand up. First.
Okay, go ahead, Brianna. You're first.
Yeah,
and then
thank you.
Johanny.
So just keeping it short and quick, because I know we've gone over because I know that we're past the limit. But to be frank, I just don't think I don't believe that it's smart for us to meet in person. People still have pre-existing conditions. There are people with children. It's not, and I don't believe it's in our best interest. That's where I stand. It's not an argument. It's not a debate. I don't think that we should be meeting in person yet. Even though there's some departments, we keep seeing this up and down that's going on, especially in Reading right now. We just had the COVID conversation. What was it? 4 weeks ago, we were talking about how we have to update the website with where people can go for COVID visits and such. So we're still very much in a health crisis. I think that we have to take that into consideration. Yes, it's an inconvenience, but if we all give each other grace and if we all give each other space and respect each other's boundaries, it shouldn't be a problem to be on this at all.
All right, thank you, Bree. We're going to go to Johanny.
No, I just wanted to know what we can do as a body, or even myself in my role, to alleviate Donna's frustration, because I understand where she's coming from. I get the frustration. So I don't know, do we text you like Jeff? I'm not sure how we can help alleviate the problem. So I'm just asking.
You can lean on Frank to make sure he gets a green light on Wednesday. You can send him some threatening emails.
That's not the answer.
Text him. If we don't get a green light for that, what we'll do is we'll use chat for the remaining weeks that we're going to be on this. If that makes everybody feel better, I'll take the chat requests in order that way. That's not a bad idea. So starting at next week's meeting, we'll do the chat. In the meantime, we'll raise our hands. Bree, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Three concerns when it comes to this specific problem. One, are we making sure that before we move on to another topic, is everybody's question answered? Has everyone been acknowledged? Maybe that will take, if we take just a second to look around and see if anybody has any questions, we won't have interruptions. Two, are we utilizing the chat? Okay, if I type something in there, it doesn't take that much to be considerate of each other for space wise. I mean, I know that I have a problem. Okay, I understand that I have a big problem on my hands because I don't always raise my hand, but that's because one, it seems that you will move on to a different conversation when I'm not, when somebody else has, if you notice during this, I've been the last one to ask a question. So that's the reason why I have interrupted, because and maybe this is me just taking the impression that you're moving on to another topic too quickly. And that's fair. You guys have been here 40, 50 plus years, and I respect where you guys are at, but it is hard when me personally, I'm still trying to collect the information and utilize it in the way that makes sense to me, which you guys have been sitting on for a very long time now. So there was three very important things I want you to take away from what I just said. Is one, let's just make sure that everybody has gotten their answer, okay, before we move on too quickly. And that is something that I have observed several times. Two, let's just make sure that we're utilizing the chat. If we have a question, we can utilize the chat. Three, let's just refer back to one. That's all.
Good. All right, Bree, thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. And you're getting better, and it will take time, and I know it's a new process. So I support, the gradual improvements that we're making. I do try to ask everybody if there's additional questions, but that doesn't say I didn't forget to do that sometimes. So, typically before I move on, like to the next ordinance or to a new topic, I'll say, does anybody have any additional comments? I think we'll consider the chat in our upcoming meetings so that, there's no concern. But again, I think getting back into public discussion for me is going to be probably the most fruitful way for everybody to interact without having to look for little hands and, raise our hand. It's just not a good way to do business. And we're going on 2 years of doing it's been about 2 years, right? That we've been in Zoom meeting, 2 years. Yeah, I mean, it's reached its end. I mean, no, Brianna, I got Marcia next. And then if you have a follow-up comment, we'll open it up. We got Marcia, go ahead.
Okay, and I appreciate some of the other techniques that you can use Zoom with. I do, and I have to be speaking to you gently but clearly, Brianna. Please get your facts accurate as far as how long some of us have been on council. It isn't 40 to 50 years, because we are not of the age range that would allow that. We are the older senior members of council, and we And for me, I'm going on my 18th year, okay? So just for clarity, we do have learned a lot through institutional knowledge, but we want to share that with everyone so we all can be on the same page, just as you're more aware of certain things than we are. So I think as a body, we need to share what we know, including sharing for the time that we need to be on technology, what we all know about that. I will be sharing a link in the chat room in a minute regarding the information from CDC, just so we all can be on the same page about that. Thank you.
All right, Brianna, did you have another comment? You had your hand up, and then Donna.
I have another comment. I've been working from home at my other job for 3 years, since March of 2020. So we're going on 3 years now, give or take. And I work with older people that do not have the same issues. So I feel like we keep reiterating and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but every week it's the same problem. Is it or not? It's the same problem. Okay, people interrupting each other, people getting upset that they're getting interrupted. And I think that in this time, we should all have grace for each other. And I don't know about you guys, I don't think that this is gonna change if we meet in person or not. Like, courtesy is courtesy, grace is grace, that's all. So I apologize I apologize for the 40-year-old, 50-year-old comment, whatever, but what the metaphor that I was trying to use is that you guys have been here longer. So for me, getting comfortable with asking questions and not being treated like I don't even have the word for how like no, generally speaking, I don't even have the word for how you guys have acted in the weeks, just getting used. And this is really just from like the very first meeting. Like, we had that, and this is why I'm saying, this is the reason I'm saying this, because we've had the same conversations from the very first meeting. So it's not about nitpicking each other, it's about giving each other grace and space. Like, we shouldn't be having attitudes or catching attitudes because someone interrupted somebody. It's not that serious. The pandemic is serious.
All right, thank you, Bree. And Donna, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think we can't get back in council chambers soon enough. The public we serve deserves it. I have no second thoughts, you want to talk about age? Okay, guys, full disclosure, I'm the grand old lady of city council. I have some pre-existing conditions. I am not scared to go back into council chambers and meet in person as our constituents feel we should be there. So I am happy to be there. You can call me the old lady of council. That's fine. I have no issues with that. I'm not scared to sit there. I'm not scared to meet people in person. I'm out in the street. I interact with folks. I have a grandson that I care deeply about. I try to be as safe as possible, but the world has to get back. We can't live in fear our entire lives. And we have public trust that's invested in us, which means the public expects to see us out there, Dominican Republic Day, with the raising of the flag. Johanny, Wes, Maria were out there. Marcia and I were we were honored to be with the folks yesterday visiting us, the African American inventors. We're supposed to be of the people, which means then we're there. So I saw the technology yesterday. I know it's close to being completed in council chambers, and having been on this board for the bulk of the time since 2002, Planning Commission prior to that, we always met in person. It's the best way to meet. It's the best way to communicate. And I am looking forward to the day. Very, very soon we will do that. That's my opinion. I stand by.
All right, additional comments, Bree, I think you're next. Yeah.
And when the numbers start to rise, right? What will you say? So that's my question for you guys that are saying you're taking something that I'm saying and making it into something, when I'm telling you that we should be worried about a pandemic. When the numbers, my question for you is, when the numbers rise, right? Because we know we're in the pandemic. We had just had the conversation last month. No, we just, was it last month or the month before? We just had a conversation about updating our residents with the information for COVID. So we know COVID is still a real thing, and we're more worried about being in person so we can chat and be next to each other than we are, because we can't handle technology. We're more worried about being in person because it's inconveniencing one or two people. When this is a pandemic, that people's lives are at stake, but because you're willing to risk, because Jeff is uncomfortable, because Donna's willing to risk her life, that means that I have to risk my life, or that somebody else has to risk their life. That's unfair. That's unfair. That's unfair. And that's the point of it. When the numbers start to rise again, then don't.
Yeah.
More
So
power.
Bree,
We're
it's
in the middle of a pandemic, but because you guys feel uncomfortable with being on technology, that we now have to go in and risk our lives and risk the lives of other people because you guys feel uncomfortable. Thank you.
Yeah, Bree, and I understand your emotions, but because it's a very sensitive issue. And, the state of Pennsylvania is almost very close to moving into an endemic situation. I can't even tell you all those variables, but that pretty much puts it into a standard protocol. We are not arbitrarily making this decision on our own. We are being guided by the public health officials throughout the state of Pennsylvania. Omicron a month ago or 6 weeks ago was a pretty rapid and high rate variant of this pandemic, and it infected a lot of people, which in a sense also inoculated many of them as well, even those who already had the thing. There are lots of diseases out there that we'll never cure.
Jeff,
Unfortunately, Brianna, let me finish. That people with existing conditions and age issues and other things will always be exposed to, and they have to always be careful. Society as a whole isn't going to continue to go down that path. Now, if a new variant comes, Brianna, let me finish, please. If a new variant comes out, if a new, certainly we will react accordingly. But again, most of the public are at the other end of the spectrum than where we're at. Philadelphia listed its vaccine requirements, I believe, in the restaurants. Australia opened up their borders for tourists. The state is slowly removing mask requirements in the schools. We're not making an arbitrary decision on our own. We're just trying to catch up to the rest of the world. I'm as most concerned like Donna. I mean, I have my own health issues. I don't want to put myself at risk, but I'm out in public all the time. I don't, I don't feel threatened.
I'm not talking about the rest of the world. I'm talking about Reading. I'm talking about the fact that just last month, I sent an email asking us to update the websites with where people can go to get the COVID vaccine or go get tested. I'm talking about the fact that Joe Biden just sent us COVID tests in the mail to make sure that people have access to COVID tests. So when you say, when I'm talking about Reading, I'm not talking about New York. I'm not talking about Philadelphia. I'm talking about Reading. So when you guys sit here and encourage in every other setting, say, I can't wait, it's always, I can't wait, instead of how can I improve myself so that I am right now in the moment able to assist to the best of my ability to do what I have to do now, instead of saying, I can't wait till the next, I can't wait. Well, guess what? The people can't wait for you guys to get it together, to learn how to work, to get it together, to learn how to work technology. We were picked for this so that we can so that we can help them to the best of our ability. So yeah, maybe we don't want to be on Zoom meetings with everybody, but that's not us voicing that and being frustrated frustrated every other week. Every week. No, because we meet weekly. Frustrated every week, hearing the same thing, how terrible the Zoom meetings are, how someone's upset because they're overtalked. The same conversation. We're not being aggressive. We're not moving anywhere. We're just complaining about the same thing every time.
All right. Thank you for your input. See, first of all, Reading isn't going to make a decision just on the subset of Reading's information. We're looking at the broad-based handling of this pandemic in the region and across the state. Brianna, let us finish now. We're going to move on. Brianna.
For us to get work done, one person needs to speak at a time, please.
You gotta, when you're asking, you gotta stop, okay? So we'll make
Everything
this
equals
decision
you
as a
guys.
body in the city, and you're allowed to have your own personal opinions. There's nothing wrong with that.
It affects me when you guys.
Brianna, you're done.
You
Brianna,
guys
stop.
get upset.
Brianna,
You guys get upset.
Brianna,
Last week,
Brianna,
Donna
you
and
need to
Marcia
listen.
ganged up on me. It's
Brianna.
every week with you guys when it comes to this social stuff.
Brianna, you
It's
gotta have to get,
not be a
you gotta get a
problem.
hold of
Why am
yourself.
I always the one that has to speak?
Gotta get a grip of yourself. You gotta, honestly, I'll follow up after the meeting.
Yeah,
but
you
you
don't
gotta
need
get
to
a grip.
follow
We've
up.
got other
You
people
don't
to
need to follow
speak,
up with
and
me. I'm
you
a
gotta
grown
stop.
woman. I just told you how I feel. You want to argue
That's
back
good.
and
You're
forth.
allowed to feel whatever way you want, but you
I'm
gotta
not
follow the
arguing
protocols
anymore.
of the meeting, or
I'm
I'm
not
gonna have to
arguing
silence you.
anymore. I'm not. I gave you
Brianna, my
a
last
reasonable
warning, you
solution.
gotta follow the
You do not want to
protocol.
take the solution. You want to raise your voice. I gave
Linda,
you a reasonable solution.
Linda,
and you
because I
walked
need to
in
move
there.
on to other
You
speakers.
guys
Can you
want
cut
to
the
argue.
sound?
Like this is a great philosophy. This is
Brianna, I'd
great
hate to
thinking.
cut your sound,
Great
but you gotta
behavior.
stop. Okay, thank
You
you.
can stop. You can stop. You are
Brianna,
in charge
you
of.
gotta
You
get a
sit in
grip
charge
of,
and you
look,
can argue.
you gotta keep your
Like,
emotions
you
out of this
figured
for a
out
moment and allow
that
us, all right,
how
Linda,
frustrating
I
that is
need
for
you
you
to
to
cut
sit
the
here and go
volume.
back
Can you
and
cut the
forth with
sound?
me. I don't want to go back and forth with you. I gave you a solution and you nitpick and said, what did I just
I'm
said?
not nitpicking.
Three
I'm
things,
allowing you
three
to speak,
solutions.
but
And
you're
instead
going
of
on and
listening
on.
to
You're
the three
interrupting me
solutions,
now. All right,
you jumped in,
Linda, do you have
nitpick.
control of her
You
mic or
nitpick
no?
on things, and it's just frustrating how you nitpick and you drag on the little
I
things.
understand you're frustrated. You told us you're
It's frustrating
frustrated.
to me, and it's frustrating to everybody here.
Brianna, are you willing to stop now so other people can speak? We know you're
Are you
frustrated.
willing?
You're
I'm not
okay
a
to be
child.
frustrated.
I'm not a child, Jeff. And I'm.
All right, that's why I'm asking you to stop and allow other people.
Linda, you need to mute
Tired
her.
of it. Like really, I'm really tired of it. Like
Yeah, you can be
going
tired
back
of a lot
and
of
forth and
things, but
having
you
to talk
can't
to
break
people. Why do you think
protocols.
that it's
You
okay
can
to
go
talk to
stand
people
on the
a certain
corner and
way?
be frustrated during a city council meeting.
Wait,
Could
why do
we
you think
please end this meeting so that
Yeah,
obviously
we're gonna
Brianna
end this
can
meeting.
call?
We're gonna regroup in our regular business meeting because I can't get Brianna to, is she cut?
She's commuted now.
What? You can't get Brianna to wait.
To give everyone else a turn, Brianna, will you stop? You gotta follow protocol. Nobody can tell you how you should feel, but you have to follow protocols. This is a city meeting. So I'm gonna move on. Melissa, you had a comment. Brianna, let Melissa speak, please.
Hold on, because I'm trying to get my thoughts together now. My only question was, when we do come to the decision of going back, we're just going, are we voting on it? Majority?
Yeah, we'll certainly take a tally on it, Melissa, but unless there's reason for us not to go back, there's not, as the council president, I can't see us holding, Zoom meetings forever. We've got to get back in public for the public. People want to see us. We, as Donna and others have expressed, we need to be
Yeah, I
present
don't
and
have
available.
an issue with that. I was just
Yeah.
asking. It's not that serious.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is, well, I understand we're in a pandemic, but it's not that serious to go, nobody's debating anything. We're talking here back and forth. No argument over here.
Okay. Thanks, Melissa. Wes, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was gonna say, even when we're allowed to go back into council chambers, well, we still have the option of, I guess, having the hybrid option. I know last year when I was watching the meetings, that's what was going on. Council members, some of them would go into chambers, the others would choose to be on Zoom. Would
Wes,
we still be allowed to do that? Is that an option? Is what I'm
I think
asking.
maybe for an interim period, we might do that for maybe 2 or 3 meetings, but once, you go ahead, Linda.
We did change our participation rules to allow council members to choose whether to be in person or connect hybrid. We still will be Zooming our meetings.
Yeah, but that's going to be for an interim measure. That's not going to be permanent. I think inevitably we change those rules for the pandemic, but inevitably, Wesley, maybe it's a month and a half out, we'll get out of the hybrid motion altogether because we need to be in public. We need to be in person. This technology thing gives me, I don't even have a gavel.
Well, I'm sorry. I would just ask if we could keep it to, and I'm not saying just for me because I am a college student, but I'm for also council members who, have to deal with other things and they can't make it into the council chambers, that we can accommodate us in all fashions. whether it's the Zoom or we allowing us to come in. That would just, I just asked if council members would recognize that.
Well, that's something the body can consider with. I don't think it's an unfair request. So I think when we cross that bridge of a green light, I think we'll have to consider after an interim period of hybrid collectively on how we want to do business. And we'll get some guidance from the solicitor as well. So it's a good request. Marcia, and then whoever else.
Yeah, and I just want to make some clarifications besides the fact that I apologize for misspelling on the chat room. I obviously don't have as good a control of the keyboard, but I have to say that there were statements that were made that there is some apology owed to council members. First of all, about technology. Many of us are fully competent in using Zoom meetings. I professionally run Zoom meetings. I provide technology background for Zoom meetings. I'm perfectly able to use the chat room and all aspects of that. I prefer face-to-face, in-person meetings as a way of communication. That has been my style, but I am able to switch back and forth whenever it's needed. I base my decisions on public health data. That's part of my profession, okay? So that the data at this point clearly states, and I again included the reference to CDC, and I think we need to be able to learn how to move on in a respectful way, in a way that we can have, and I appreciate the comment that Councilwoman Ventura made, how we all feel about the situation. And I think what I'm hearing too is some of our personal styles, irregardless of the pandemic situation, prefer not to have face-to-face meetings. That's another issue that probably would have never come front if we hadn't had the pandemic that put us into this. Now we're in a different place with a different discussion. So this needs to be an open, fluid discussion, but respectful of the council president and respectful of Robert's Rules of Order. So I look forward to having those discussions on those terms.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say that you guys talk about respect. Well, wasn't it 2 weeks ago that Donna and Marcia ganged up on me during a meeting because Donna thought that she wasn't finished with her conversation, and even after I apologized, Donna and Marcia still were trying to get at me. So it's. I want again to reiterate that you guys need to look at yourself when you talk about grace and talk about how you guys you don't hear Johanny talk being upset about this, or Melissa or Wesley. It's the same three people. So what are you guys doing to improve how you guys utilize Zoom?
All right, Brianna, if there are no other thank you. I understand your concerns. I think we all just got to get a little less sensitive. We all got to respect each other, and we just got to get through this stuff. All I can do is control the protocol here. I can't control feelings or reactions.
But it's your feeling. Jeff, you constantly comment about how you can't wait. You understand? When you talk about sensitivity, you are the person that complains the very most about Zoom. So yes, I don't have a problem with going back to, if it's mandated that we have to go back in there and back into a meeting, I don't mind. But when you talk about feelings, it's you, Jeff,
Okay.
it's no, but listen, it's Marcia and it's Don. It's the same people. Just like last week, it's the same people. When I do something and I'm wrong about it, I apologize for that. But y'all are the ones who are constantly having the issues and complaining. So when I respectfully ask that you guys figure out how you can better. You don't, even today you say you were having issues. We waited. Nobody complained. Nobody was mad about that. We waited. You were the one that was upset about this. It's your feelings. It's Marcia's feelings. It's Donna's. It's not Wesley's feelings. It's not Brianna's feelings. It's not Melissa's feelings. It's you guys. So I ask again that you respectfully, I'm being extremely as humble as I can ever be when I tell you that maybe it's you guys that should try to work on practice, maybe practicing how you guys work this so that you're not late to a meeting, because it's your feelings. Every comment, every week, you say the same thing.
Yeah, okay, Bree, is there anything other than feelings?
You're talking about feelings. You're the one that brings this up.
Do you have anything
I want
other
you to
than
acknowledge that. I
feelings
want everybody
today?
to acknowledge that you're the one that said that it's about feelings, and all I deal with is facts. It's
That's
you.
great. You've made it clear that your feelings aren't good. I've been as
What are you
respectful as
talking
I
about? I
can
didn't
be.
say that. I said
I-
you
well,
feel
you-
some
you-
type of
you feel like
way.
we're disrespecting you. I've been as fair as I can be. I can't
Yes,
control your
you-
reaction.
but
Breathe, stop.
That's
I
fine.
can't control your reaction. You guys got to deal with your feelings. I don't know if you want to go hit the pillow at night. All I can tell you is I got to have protocols in these meetings. When I ask people to stop, they got to stop. I'm as fair to you as I am to everybody else. And even more fair, you won't even let me speak. So let it go. Deal with the feelings, rise above it, follow the protocols. And if somebody doesn't treat you right, ain't nothing I can do about it, or you just don't give them power to get you upset, okay? Just follow the protocols and you won't follow, and that's true of everybody. Follow the protocols and then nobody will be upset with you. And if they are, who cares? What other people think of me is none of my business. All I'm telling you, I'm not trying to get back into a public meeting. It's the public that wants us back in a public meeting. We gotta get there. Johanny, it's your turn.
That you want to get back.
Johanny's turn.
All right, excuse me, with all due
This is our-
respect,
this is our last
council
comment.
members, the time is 7:14,
Yeah.
and we do have
I agree.
constituents waiting for us to
Thank
carry
you.
on our public meeting. Thank you.
I agree.
All right, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
regroup at 7:20, guys. That's 5 minutes. Let's get on the other link and we're gonna get into our business meeting. All right, thank you.